Hi everyone, real pleasure to be making this introduction to our Wednesday keynote and introducing René Carayol. And thinking about this particular keynote, it's such challenging times at the moment. I think there's an urgent need for an honest, informed conversation around leadership, diversity, and the need for genuine collaboration. And lo and behold, we have a keynote chosen many months ago who brings very practical, precise and powerful insights that I hope will enable us to have that conversation and to make genuine changes. So it's not only great, but I think very timely to have René speaking today. And if you do page through and a bit quick Google search on René and who he's worked with, well, if we leave the likes of the Bransons and the Camerons of this world to one side, there are two standouts for me, which are Nelson Mandela and General Colin Powell. And if no one else asks the question today, I am going to be asking what it was like to meet and work with the great man. So René, you have been warned. So I'll shut up now. I'll hand you to René, and a real pleasure to introduce him and your keynote for Wednesday.
Lawrence, you're very generous. Thank you very much indeed. And welcome to everyone. Look, we are in the most unprecedented times that I can remember. But we've been in difficult times before and we got through before. No one wants to work for the pessimist. Today's about leadership. It's about culture. It's about collaboration. And I want to kick you off a few years ago. A good few years ago, I used to write for the Observer newspaper, the business section. And this is about 2007, 2008. And I wrote something quite challenging about the banks. If you remember at the time of the financial global crisis, the banks weren't covering themselves with glory. And I said that at a time when they should be as close to their customers, care about their customers, they really weren't doing it. And I was quite hard-hitting about it. Monday morning, I get a phone call. It's a guy called Chris Pilling. Didn't know who Chris Pilling was. Chris Pilling was the chief executive of First Direct Bank. He said, I read your piece yesterday and I think it was a bit harsh. Not all banks are the same. Would you mind coming up to visit us so I can show you something about a bank with a slightly different culture? Our business is all about culture. We don't have branches. We're located in different areas. We've got to work really hard to come together as a team and collaboration. It's what makes us stand out. I never forgot those words. A week later, I'm driving up to Leeds where their two call centres are. First Direct at that time was two call centres in Leeds. I drove up, got into the car park, and the car park attendant came out up to the barrier, looked in through the car window, and he said to me, René Carayol. I was stunned. How did he recognise me? He said, I've got a parking place for you. Lifted the barrier and walked in front of the car and led me to the parking place. It just made my morning. What a great way to start the day. And I came out of the car and I walked down to reception. He just made it for me. Just a smiling face, a friendly voice, knowing your name. What a difference. I walked through two sliding doors into the reception. There was three smiling young women there, and one of them said, good morning, René, how are you? Again, it threw me. She said, let me call Chris. He's expecting you. Please grab a seat. Small little details, but they matter. As I always say, before I work with any organization, give me 30 minutes sitting in their reception. Just on my own, tells me everything about the prevailing culture of the organization. Within minutes, down came Chris. It was Chris, not his assistant, not his PA. It was Chris, chief executive of First Direct. Shook my hand warmly and escorted me upstairs. What an introduction. This was a different sort of bank. So over the past few years, we've worked with businesses from just about every industry, every geography, and every one of them is going through tremendous change, if not transformation. And we learned the big lesson. Strategy is important. Culture is vital. I had the privilege of working with some outstanding leaders, and I mean really outstanding leaders. Something I've taken away from all of these leaders, not one of them is an all-rounder. Not one of them is brilliant at everything, but every one of them is brilliant at something. And the very, very best of them have the humility to know the 2 or 3 things that they're really good at and the many things they're not so good at. And when I'm working with them, and this is why I wrote the book Spike, was to try and find their spikes, their standout strengths, the things that they're great at. And what I've done when working with them is trying to surround them with a team that compensates for the things they're not so good at. This is leadership today. No one person can answer every question on their own anymore. They don't solve every problem on their own anymore. The world's too complex and too fast moving and the markets are too unforgiving. When we say strategy, when we say leadership, we now mean team. That's why it's absolutely essential that we stop this traditional fixation on the best person for the job. We change the lens, we reframe it. We look for the best person for the team. So back to where we are today. This is my favorite quote of the moment. It's, some of us are doing jobs that never existed before, and others will never do the same jobs again. We've got to be adaptable. We've got to be agile. The world is turning over very quickly. Experience may be slightly overrated. It's those who can adapt, those who can change, those who can transform. And we've got to focus on the exit. This will end. We will get through this. And a few things to look at. Restart the right work. Keep people safe and go beyond the government guidelines. Do more than the government says you should do. Energize your workforce. Get them ready for acceleration. Take a tough approach to costs. Get your leaders energized and activated to drive change. Focus on your purpose and your culture. And leverage all the technology that you possibly can. All the work we've done recently drives me to believe that our people, sometimes in different geographic locations, sometimes isolated, working from home, but doing the best they can, are looking for 3 things from their leaders: clarity, certainty, and hope. And I'm going to say that again so we don't miss it. All of us leaders, what our people are looking for is a little more clarity, a little more certainty, and a lot more hope. That's our job. Everything else we push down, our job is leadership. Creating the environment where our people can succeed. The Americans coined this phrase VUCA. You've heard it many times. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. These are the times we live in today. This means management alone won't get us there. We need a bit of leadership. But here's a message to every one of you who's listening in on this session. The biggest myth in Western developed society: leaders are only at the top of the organization. Leaders are only at the top of the business. It's nonsense. Leaders are everywhere. The challenge we have is that we've got to go and find those leaders. We've got to go and authorize them. We've got to give them permission. We've got to empower them. And if you're looking for the leaders, and if you're one of those leaders, here's the clue. Look for those who can influence and persuade without authority. They're your leaders. And there are many of them on this call. They may not be called senior manager, they may not be called executive. That doesn't mean you're not a leader. It's your choice. You choose to become that leader today. So this will pass. Focus on the exit. Think about how you're going to be when we emerge through the other end. Worry less about what's happened in the past. Worry about everyone you work with today. Look out for each other, look after each other, but focus on the exit. First story. 3 men working on a building site in the burning sun. Breaking rocks is the toughest work you've ever seen. The journalist comes up and asks the first one, "Why do you do this job?" Said, I haven't worked for 3 years. I took the first job I could get. Goes to the second, "Why do you do this job?" "I've got a wife and 3 kids. I took the first job I could get." Goes to the third one, says, "Why do you do this job?" Guy looks up, wipes the sweat from his brow, leans on his shovel, and says with a look of pride, "I'm helping to build a cathedral. I'm helping to build a cathedral." Or mosque or temple, synagogue, depending on where you are. But no matter what role, what job title, what roles or responsibilities your people have, your job is to make them feel they're part of something special and they've got something to belong to. And you can't tell them once, you've got to tell them every day. You're helping to build a cathedral. You're helping to build the stained glass windows. You're helping to build the spire. You can't tell them once and go away. It's not just for the town hall. Every day remind them They're part of something special. Back to First Direct. So Chris is showing me around the building where his people are. It's a call center. They're in sort of cubicles, but somehow there's a team spirit. Everyone seems to be together. They don't seem to be separated. There's something powerful as we go around. We come to this very old table with lots of signs handwritten in felt tip pen, and there's 4 or 5 people around the back rushing around, very busy, smiling, laughing. And I said, what's this table? He said, this is our presenteeism desk. What do you mean presenteeism? He said, well, about a year ago, 6 of our team who are coming close to retirement dropped me a note. They had an initiative called presenteeism. One of the challenges you have in a call center is that obviously people sometimes have to take time off to do lots of different things, and absenteeism can become a problem. So we work really hard about building team spirit, building purpose, and ensuring that we've got this collaborative spirit that everyone wants to be part of. And they had an idea that if I was prepared to back them, they wanted to run this desk where they would do all the things that people have to slip out to do during the day, or have to take a half day off or come in late. The dry cleaning, buy the theatre tickets, take the kids to school, take the kids to the dentist. All the things that one has to do all the time. Get the car booked in for a service, book those holiday tickets. They said they'd do everything for everyone who works here from these desks. They also said our return on investment was presenteeism. We'd see the numbers of absenteeism go down, and that would pay for them being here. They wanted to stay at First Direct. Within 3 months, they paid for themselves. It's the best decision I ever made. The world is moving not as top down as it used to. The ideas come from everywhere. We're not just looking up at the boss to come up with the ideas. Everyone comes up with the ideas. There was a time when we used to challenge down, support up. Today, we're expecting our people to challenge up and support down. Where are the new ideas coming from? But in order for that to work for all of us, you've got to create an environment where people feel they can speak up. They can feel their voice is going to be heard. They can feel as though they matter. They belong. They're not invisible. They're included. Part of an inclusive culture. Every one of us is different. Every one of us responds in a different way. The role of the leader is to create an environment which has psychological safety at its heart, so everyone can be who they want to be. They can bring all of themselves into their place of work, and they can speak up without fear. Many of the people I look after will say to me, but René, you don't understand, I'm so busy, especially nowadays. 7:30, I'm logging on to my first Zoom call. Before I know it, it's 7:30 in the evening and I've not left the laptop. I feel even guilty to go for a cup of coffee. I'm just stuck to it every day. The intensity, it's huge. I don't really have the time to get away from all the task management, progress chasing, the project management. I'm on it. I'm on the KPIs. Where do I get the time for people? Where do I get the time to look after my people? I used to do management by walking around. Can't do any of that now. Oh, yes, you can. What's wrong with the phone call? The unsolicited phone call to your people with no agenda, no task list, no to-do list. Just checking up that they're okay. Build an environment where you've pushed every one of your tasks down. You don't need to be the expert about everything. You need to be available. You need to be visible. You need to be there for your people. And instead of management by walking around, how about management by phoning around? Doesn't need to be a Zoom call, doesn't need to be on Teams. Just the phone call, say, how are you doing? We haven't spoken for some time. Just checking up to see if you're okay. It can make such a difference. The real driver is building an environment with a desire for success, not a fear of failure. Another story. We had the privilege and pleasure of working with Angela Arendts when she was Chief Executive of Burberry. An amazing presence. She just turned around a rather stodgy, inward-looking, old-fashioned, traditional British retailer into a glitzy, global, fast-moving, fashionable brand. And I want you to listen to her talk about her cathedral. This is numbers don't create excitement. The quarterly targets aren't what gets us out of bed in the morning. We're not inspired by our KPIs. It's leaders that inspire us. Have a listen to Angela.
Great brands and great businesses have to be great storytellers too. We have to tell authentic stories, emotive, compelling stories. And I think even more so because we're nonfiction and we are building a lifelong relationship with people. And every great relationship has to be built on trust. The company's been around 150 years. It's a big, great story. We were actually celebrating the 150th anniversary when I started. Christopher and I, in one of our very first group meetings, stood up in front of all of the associates in the UK. And in that very first presentation, we told the team the amazing novel had been written about the company. So we actually brought in a cultural anthropologist to study the company to make sure that we understood the story. And we said, we should capture this story for the last 5 years so that we can pass it on to the next generation so that they understand how we've built this amazing culture, how we've turned or transformed the brand around. And that we weren't looking to write another book, but we were looking to write some really new, exciting chapters. Trust is a really big part of the values of the company, and it almost underpins every form of communication. Any constituency who's touching your brand or your business, associates, business partners, consumers, or investors, they want to trust that you're going to deliver the message, the feeling, the product that you said you were. We wanted one story that everybody could feel, everybody could see, and not just feel the emotion, but feel the energy. Everybody's a storyteller. I don't care if it's a business, a brand, a writer, a musician. Everybody's telling their life story. Yes, we've been telling a compelling fashion story, and yes, we've been telling a young millennial story and a heritage story, and of course it's got to be British, but we've also been telling a very strong value story. And I don't think the world's ever going to want to stop hearing stories.
Stories, stories, stories. Angela created something really special at Burberry. An amazing leader, an amazing presence. She had these 4 dinners every year. These dinners that become so aspirational, up to 20 people from the 8,000 strong workforce, global workforce from Burberry. You'd get an invite to have dinner with Angela. Everyone wanted to be invited for a dinner with Angela. They'd made it so that if you were chosen to go, it said something about you. It said something about your career. Marissa was working for Burberry for a good few years now. She was head of women's sourcing. I was mentoring Marissa. I'd mentored her for a couple of years. And her dream was dinner with Angela. And one week I got the phone call and she just couldn't stop talking. I've got it. I've been invited. I'm going to dinner with Angela. What do I wear? What am I going to say? She was just going berserk. I loved the energy. I loved her passion. I loved her enthusiasm. I knew how important this was for her. We had a few mentoring sessions. We'd got her in the right frame of mind, got her in the right mood. And then 2 days before the dinner, I get a phone call. You'll never believe it. I can't make it. I can't attend the dinner. What's up? What's going on that's going to take you away from that dinner? You'll never believe this. A few years ago, my nephew was stabbed and killed. And the murderer was put away for life. Would you believe they're up for parole the same day as a dinner with Angela? The dinner's in London. The parole hearing is in Glasgow, 400 miles north of London. I'm not going to be up there for the whole day for the hearing and get back down in time. And I'm the last surviving member of the family. I've lost my aunt. I've lost my uncle. He just can't be given parole. I've got to be there. I said, yes, you do. What am I going to do about Angela's dinner? You're going to write Angela a handwritten note and tell her the story that you've told me, word for word. Marissa wrote the note. Said, you're going to take it up to her office. She took it up to Angela's office. Angela was in a meeting. Angela's PA sat outside. She left it with her PA. She wandered back downstairs. 20 minutes later, Angela was standing in front of Marissa's desk. She too had a handwritten note for Marissa. She thanked her for her note. She said to her, "You need to be in Glasgow. It's the right decision. You need to be there for you, your nephew, and your family. There'll be other times when we can have dinner. We will have dinner." They hugged. There was a tear shed. And off went Angela. Within minutes, that story had hit the grapevine, the Burberry grapevine. Normally, it's the gossip on the grapevine. It's the bad news, the things that go wrong. All of a sudden, it was good news. It was Angela. It was Marissa. Guess what that said for the values and the culture of Burberry? What's your story? What story are you telling? What story are you sharing? Stories drive culture. And remember, until the lions have their own storytellers, the tales of the hunt will always favor the hunter. What's your story? Let me say it again. Clarity, certainty, hope. I was lucky enough to work with the chief executive of ING Bank in the Netherlands, Ralph Hammers. He's recently left. In fact, he started this week. He started as chief executive of UBS Bank in Switzerland. He was the youngest ever appointed chief executive of ING Bank. He's the longest serving. He served for seven years. I was there at the start, and I was called back to come back and do a little bit of work with him before he left. An amazing guy. This was the interview I did with Ralph when he first joined. Again, the cathedral. Something for everyone to belong to, someone to feel part of something special. Imagine if this is what your leader said about you.
How will you deal with such a competitive marketplace? Yeah, the marketplace is competitive. At the same time, you need to have guts. You need to have courage to change. And I think ING has shown the courage in the past to really go into markets and reshape the industry, reshape the models.
What gives you that courage?
I believe that if any institution in the world can pull this one off, if any team in the world can pull it off, if any group of employees can pull it off, it is us. We've shown it in the past in various ways, and I'm confident we can show it in the future. But it will not come without changes. Changes in the way we organize ourselves, changes in the culture, changes in the sort of people that we need for this, the different skills. But if any company, if any bank, if any financial institution, if any insurance company can pull it off, it's us.
Wow. You'd want to work for him. Leaders tell stories. Managers talk strategy. Powerful stories of your people doing the right thing. If you really want to drive performance, you really want to change your culture, one of the most powerful things you do, even beats the engagement survey, beats all the measurement, all the data, is catch your people doing things right. Find those who are doing things in an exemplary way and retell and tell those stories. Inspire everyone. And it's how we drive the collaborative behavior. Stories, stories, stories. No more room for that lone wolf. And remember, the strength of the pack is the wolf. The strength of the wolf is the pack. Everyone's got to believe in the pack. I started off with First Direct. Let's get to First Direct again. Way back in the day, I remember Mike Harris, a serial entrepreneur. I was chairing a summit with a bunch of investors in the room, and Mike stood up and he was pitching the idea of a bank without branches. People were nearly laughing. They couldn't envisage this world, this crazy world where you'd ever have a bank without branches. Just think how normal that is today. He went on to found Egg, the first internet bank, but he did first what became First Direct in at Midland Bank and at HSBC. It was revolutionary. But the bit I remember when I was interviewing Mike, he said, It's not about the technology, it's about the culture. We're going to build a culture beyond anything any bank has done before. Everyone's going to focus on the 24/7 telephone banking that we're going to launch. But believe you me, this is about culture. I talked about Chris Pilling before. We became quite close, and Chris asked me to speak at a conference and be the MC, the compere at a conference that he was having for First Direct. And he'd come under a lot of pressure from HSBC Bank, which was the parent company, who wanted him to reduce the number of heads, put loads of processes in. He was resisting it. He didn't want to risk manage it. He didn't want to put in the automated greeting software. He insisted that what made First Direct really special was a human voice within 3 rings of the phone. It's what made them stand out at the time. They were a 24/7 telephone bank, but it was 3 rings. It's what made them special. And no matter what happened, no matter where you called from, anywhere in the world, you get a human voice within 3 rings. HSBC approved that all the different tests of different sort, they could reduce the footprint, reduce the number of heads, reduce everything by an automated greeting system. Chris resisted it. At this conference, I was going to create an environment where Chris could tell this story. I got Chris up on the stage, we created the environment, got the atmosphere right, and he told this story, which I've never forgotten, and I don't want you to forget either. On the tragic day of 9/11, when the second jet went into the second building, there was a British woman working on the 12th floor. She was trapped by all the falling machinery. She couldn't move. She had her mobile phone in her hand. She was able to dial one number. Which number did she dial? She dialed First Direct. It's a British-based bank. It has no North American offices, no North American presence. But she dialed First Direct. Why? She knew, guaranteed, a human voice within 3 rings. The operator picks up the phone. Yes, ma'am, can I help you? I'm in the second building. I'm trapped on the 12th floor. Could you please contact my husband? Of course, ma'am. One of my colleagues is dialing him as we speak. She says, could you also please contact my children? Of course, ma'am. Another one of my colleagues is dialing your children as we speak. What she didn't say was she realized she was losing consciousness. The operator kept her talking for 45 minutes because a third colleague had called the emergency services. She was rescued after 45 minutes. Now, what do you call that? Is that process? Is that development? Is that KPIs? Or is that culture? I put it to you, that's culture. That's a culture that Mike Harris built bottom up. That's a culture that Chris Pilling was fueling. It's culture that's going to get us to the exit and see us in the right places through this pandemic. And good leaders create followers. Great leaders create leaders. I'm coming towards the end of our time together, and I want to close by bringing this all together. It's a culture of coaching, where every leader in the organization is creating an environment where their people can succeed. We know the things we're really good at. We surround ourselves with people who do the things we're not so good at. And it's all about the team. Collaboration is the new leadership. But it starts with everyone caring for each other. And the question I ask of all the teams, how committed are you to each other's success? You won't forget this clip either.
Honor America and salute the men and women serving our country with our national anthem. Please welcome, as voted by you, the fans, our winner of the Toyota Get the Feeling of a Star promotion, Natalie Gilbert.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the star's light broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, and the bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Wow, 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 wow. She'd sung the national anthem so many times. She knew it off by heart. She had the voice of an angel. But all of us can suffer from nerves. All of us can have that bad day, that off day. And when it's not working for us, we just hope there's someone in our team around who's going to be there. His name's Mo Cheeks. He's a basketball coach. She was crumbling. He just strode out. Leadership is not rehearsal. He didn't just help her. He stayed with her. He coached her. He was there for her. Do you think she's ever going to forget him? Guess how far she'd go for him. Clarity, certainty, hope. So any of you want to download the presentation, it'll be there for you at this link, or do it with the OR code, but at www.carayol.com/virtualbusiness, you can download all the presentation. Any questions for me? Hit me at René@carayol.com. So just to leave you with now 10 top tips, things to navigate the pandemic, things to think about with your people separated from you, things to think about raising morale in one of the most difficult times we can ever remember. Number one, when the world is at its toughest, we soon find those who never hide. Look for the right people. With the right people, you won't go wrong. Number two, it's very rare that we ever need a dictator, and definitely not in a time of crisis. We need that benevolent leader, that empathetic leader, that authentic leader. Fear and negativity will only extend the problem. Who wants to work for the pessimist? Optimism is a force multiplier. Every crisis demands speed of thought, decision-making, and teamwork. Collaboration is the new leadership. Generosity and care will always serve you well in a crisis. Look out for each other, look after each other. There's nothing like a crisis to break bad habits. You might want to stop smoking, you might want to stop a load of other stuff as well. There's no time like the present. Government has the biggest part to play in every crisis, but it's always down to us to get it done. They can U-turn all they want. We need to get it done ourselves. In unprecedented times, looking back at history doesn't always help. New problems need new thinking. Be brave, be bold, back yourself. When in trouble, call the team and then make sure you listen to them. Everyone has a point of view. Not everyone speaks up straight away. Think psychological safety. Every voice should be heard. The young always adapt better and faster, but we rarely listen to them. Experience may not be the best way out of our unprecedented problems at the moment. Try listening to someone who's a lot younger than you, but a lot braver than you, and may understand the world of technology that little bit more. Most of all, if you're bold, you might fail. If you're not bold, you will fail. It's been fantastic talking to you. I look forward to our question and answer session. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you again. Such a valuable and incredibly timely session this morning to kick off our Wednesday. Thank you for that. And for me, when we can actually take away that level of inspiration, motivation, but also some very practical tips in there, that combination is rare to see. In terms of questions, we had my own question around what it was like to work with Nelson Mandela, and that's been echoed by another delegate, Doris. And I think this is probably quite a regular question for you.
It always happens, Lawrence. It always happens. You mentioned
yours.
Everyone else gets relegated to second place. It's what happens when you've got true, authentic leadership. something that we remember forever. So quite simply, the first time I met him was in 2002, the opening of the BP Lecture Theatre inside the British Museum. And he was the guest speaker an evening, and obviously I was number one in the front row, first one there before everyone else. And it was compared by David Attenborough. You couldn't get a better duo for authenticity if you tried. But you know, it's really interesting. It's because you don't remember, as the great Maya Angelou said, not everyone remembers everything you said, but everyone remembers how you made them feel. And it was one of those evenings, especially evening never to be forgotten. And he gave a speech. It was stunning. We all listened to it. I don't remember too much. I just remember just feeling so privileged to be in the same room. The first thing I'll never forget is we all need to understand the gifts we've been given. He was blessed with the smile that radiated. When he came in the room and he smiled, involuntarily, the whole audience smiles back. You just do it. It's the first rule of public speaking. If you frown, the audience frowns. If you smile, he just radiated the room. But the one bit I'll never forget, and it stuck with me forever and said everything about his leadership. The very first question he was asked was a guy who was sitting right next to me. And he said, Mr. Mandela, my son of 21 and my daughter of 22 are leaving home for the first time and going into the wide world. What advice would you give them? He paused. He thought. He took his time. And he said, young man. This man was not young, but only he could get away with saying, he said, young man, the worst advice in the world is unsolicited advice. The best advice in the world is solicited advice. Why don't you wait till they come along and ask you for your advice? They'll take it instantly and they will never forget it. I don't remember anything else about it. I just kept buzzing in my head and it stayed with me forever. Unsolicited advice is never the best way forward.
I really like that authenticity. That resonates with people I prefer to work with, and that's more to the talk there. And now I'm going to possibly get you on a bit of a hobby horse here. So another question. I know you've got some views on this. So, but if we look at leadership around the world at the moment, we look at our very different prime ministers, presidents, leaders around the world, and I'm just interested what your thoughts are in terms of what we see in perhaps our male and female leaders and how they're faring, particularly thinking around collaboration, and any thoughts on that?
So, you know, as I said in the talk, Lawrence, it's a great question. Sometimes it takes a crisis for us to really see and understand the quality of our leadership. And the pandemic has sorted the wheat from the chaff. The first observation I would make is there is no nation being led by a woman that's doing badly with the pandemic. That's a hell of a statement. There is no nation being led by a woman. And yet, if you look at the top 15 nations that are doing badly, that are really struggling with the number of infections and tragically the number of deaths, they're all led by populist alpha males, big personalities, great at winning elections. The question we need to ask is, how good are they at governing? Now, the real word, the trick here, the word I'm talking about here is empathy, emotional intelligence, the ability to connect, the ability to touch, the ability to feel. It's not a totally female preserve, but women do it so well. Men can do emotional intelligence as well. Look at Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York. Listen to his speeches. Listen to when he's addressing the nation. Somewhat better than what we heard last night, I have to say. Last night was a great opportunity to give us some confidence, give us some optimism, make us feel a little bit better. I'm not sure that's what we got here in the UK. So the big lesson for me is, in times of crisis, look to connect, look to engage, look to walk in the shoes of your people. Think how they feel. You know, I was at a dinner party last week where everyone was saying, I love working from home. It's brilliant. You know, and I was thinking, yeah, you're all middle class. You've all got 4 bedrooms. You've all got a beautiful garden. You've got a study, a laptop. And there were 2 women serving our dinner for us. And I could see they pricked up their ears and they were nudging each other. So at the end of the meal, when I asked them, so thank you very much indeed. Tell them about working from home. For 5 minutes, we all walked in their shoes. It was a humbling experience.
Thanks for that, René. I'm going to draw that to a close. There's so many powerful messages I think that people have taken away, and that's a lot of the feedback that's coming through. So I think I'm going to let people go with that and finish on a high with those comments. So, but
well, let me leave them with a closing message, please. And
yes,
two things come out from my talk, please. Two things I would like you to take away for the times we're in. Number one, probably the most important: good leaders create followers. Great leaders create leaders. We need to go out of our way to forget age. Look for those who are talented. I've never seen anyone fulfill their potential without the intervention of a mentor. Go and find someone to mentor, please. Let's create some more leaders. And the final one for the pandemic is, if you're bold, you might fail. If you're not bold, you will fail. Time to be bold.
very good advice. Thanks again.
It's really good to talk to you. And thanks everyone for listening in and staying engaged.
That's great. See you all later.